Well, this is a majority K-pop channel, right? And I'm very interested in how fans interact with their idols, and also how K-pop groups create a relationship with their fans, and also how K-pop groups perform, and how they're promoted and managed, and so on, right? So basically all of these things can be seen in concerts. As a person who's interested in a pretty large number of groups, and who is interested in how different groups and their fans do things differently, it makes sense that I'd go to a decent number of concerts each year. Now, decent is relevant, as I'll discuss later, but I would in fact say that I go to a decent number of K-pop concerts. And I like talking about these concerts and the differences between them, as well as the positives and negatives, but my mum is sick of hearing about them. So I thought, why don't I tell all of you instead? In this video, I'll first give some background information about the kinds of concerts I go to, and how they're run in Australia, since I know there are some big differences between concerts in Australia and in other places like America and Europe. For instance, I've never seen dynamic pricing in Australia. Then I'll give an overview of each of the concerts I went to this year, what I did, how much I spent, my concert experience, pros and cons, and so on. At the end, I'll give some stats. How many concerts, their distribution, the amount of money and time I spent, etc. I'll give my thoughts at the end of the year, having had time to reflect on the earlier concerts, and will rank all of the concerts I've gone to this year. There's no particular trigger warning for this whole video, but if I discuss anything particularly triggering about any concert, I'll add it in the chapter title and timestamps in the description. I kind of doubt anything will be as bad as Stray Kids 2024. So with that said, let's get into some concert background. This is where my qualifier of a decent number of concerts each year becomes relevant. I live in Australia, right? And Australia isn't on the map for most tours. This means that compared to places like America, Asia, and Europe, we get very few concerts. However, I live in Sydney, which means that if a K-pop artist does come to Australia, they will come to Sydney, the most popular city. So when I say I go to a decent number of concerts, I mean I go to maybe 5 to 7 a year, which may not be a lot compared to someone living in London or New York, but which would be a lot compared to someone living in Brazil or Egypt or something. I haven't travelled for any concerts, which means that all of the ones I've seen have been in Sydney. For a better indication of the proportion of concerts, I probably see around a quarter to a third of all K-pop adjacent artists that come to Sydney each year, hence decent. The vast majority of the groups I see aren't my alt groups or even my favourite groups. Most of the concerts I go to, I buy the lowest price ticket and go just to check out the artist if I like them. For example, my first two concerts this year, Billlie and Dreamcatcher. I wouldn't necessarily say I stan either of these groups, and I bought the tickets before I even knew the names of all of the members, but I wanted to see them while I had the chance, and I became a bigger fan of both groups while learning more about them. In fact, none of my favourite groups have come to Australia with two exceptions. ATEEZ came in 2019 when I wasn't a fan yet, and P1 Harmony came in 2024, but I wasn't a fan then, and the concert made them one of my alt groups. P1 Harmony have come back, obviously, since they've come every year since 2022, and ATEEZ are finally coming back in March next year! Hell yeah! But not so much of a hell yeah that they probably won't perform pretty much any of their songs that I like. I'll also add a little aside in here about my merch and costuming patterns. I'm one of those people who would buy merch and literally never use it, and I've been trying to cut down on the amount of useless stuff I have lying around. Hence, I don't buy any merch at concerts. If one of my alts came, would I buy merch? Maybe, but probably not. In fact, I didn't even think about the possibility of buying merch for P1 Harmony and ATEEZ. What I'm into instead, as with a small portion of the K-pop community, is confetti. Instead of merch, which is overpriced and will lie around doing nothing, I collect confetti for each concert and keep it in jars. This is a far more personalised concert memento and is free. The jars also take up less space than the merch would, although they are still pretty useless to be fair. I don't intend to shame anyone who buys merch, or even anyone who buys merch and leaves it lying around forever. That's totally within your right to do. It's just not something I'm personally interested in, especially if I'm already paying so much for a ticket. Now for costuming and such. I know there's two schools of people going to a concert, the people who want to be comfy and the people who like dressing up. I like dressing up, but I also, 1, can't do makeup, and 2, wear noise-cancelling headphones to help protect my hearing, and therefore, unfortunately, can't wear fun-themed earrings. My solutions? Tie ribbons to my headphones and stick crystals to my face instead, XG style. Why do I bring this up? Well, first, for each concert, I'll explain the colours I chose and why, and second, because the crystals go into a small test tube in my confetti jars, and the ribbons go either in the jar or on top of it, along with any other fun things I pick up, like this freebie IN bracelet I was gifted at Stray Kids 2024. I think this is an important thing to mention because 1, it's fun, and 2, it adds a slightly more personal touch than just a jar of confetti. Here's my current confetti collection. Hand reveal, I guess. It has confetti from every concert I've ever been to, with a few exceptions. Sejong was the only concert where I wasn't allowed to collect confetti, as in the staff didn't let me. But that concert did gift every attendee with a light stick and a poster, so I still got my free memento regardless. On a somewhat similar note, most of the concerts I went to this year, like Billlie, Dreamcatcher and EVNNE, didn't actually have confetti at their concerts, so I filled the jar with the ribbons and crystals only, and also the wristband they gave me to show that I was over 18 and GA respectively. Stray Kids 2023 get a bigger jar because they were my first concert. Now, concerts in Australia. What are they like? I hear horror stories from around the world, and sure, Australian concerts aren't the best, and there have been several mismanaged and cancelled concerts, especially in 2024 and 2025, but overall I'd say we're pretty good. The 3 biggest differences I've heard of between Australia and other countries are venue security, light sticks, and dynamic pricing. First, venue security. Apparently in the US you're only allowed to bring clear bags to concerts. This makes sense since anyone could walk in with a gun. But in Australia, we have pretty strict gun laws, and there's no requirement for clear bags. Some places have bag size requirements. For instance, Qudos Arena is one of the most popular K-pop venues in Sydney and has a requirement that your bag is A5 size or smaller, but most places outside of Qudos don't actually have bag size requirements, and have more lax prohibited item lists, if they have prohibited items at all. Even Qudos, which has a decent list of prohibited items, doesn't necessarily tend to enforce this. They say that chains on belts, etc. aren't allowed, but they often let people through with chains on their belts. Australian security overall is incredibly lax, and sometimes they don't even check my bag. And this is lax of them, yeah, but at the same time, literally what is going to happen? At a K-pop concert of all events, the average Australian doesn't have access to guns, and as many an Australian has said before, and many an Australian will say in the future, I'd much rather someone came running at me with a knife than a gun. Second, light sticks. Light sticks are stocked in far lower numbers in Australia than in the US and UK, from what I can tell. This probably has something to do with shipping prices and demand. Sydney may have several million people, but Australia overall does have a far lower population than most places K-pop groups tour to. This, combined with the fact that most groups who tour bring either a small or literally non-existent number of light sticks to sell at merch stands, and that light sticks in Australia are far more expensive than in the US, Korea and Europe, and, well, most fans don't have any light sticks, or if they do, they only have 1 or 2, and those are older versions, not updated versions for every single group they follow. Do you know how much money I would have spent if I bought a light stick for the group of every single concert I went to? Anyway, this means that, unlike in Korea and many US concerts where the stadium is full of light sticks to the point the organisers can write words with them, and you're weird if you don't have one, many Australian concerts are a borderline black ocean. The only concerts I've been to where even around half of the attendees had light sticks were IVE and IDLE, who actually brought enough light sticks for most people to buy one, and P1 Harmony, who have come every year since 2022, and thus it makes sense that their fans would invest more since they have a higher chance of being able to use that light stick than, say, a BTS one. There has been a major shortage of Stray Kids light sticks in Australia for years, and when they tour here they only bring a few hundred light sticks for literally tens of thousands of fans, which is really weird to me because they are super popular here. The other lightstick note for Australia is that because very few people even own a lightstick to begin with, you see a lot of lightsticks that aren't from the group currently performing. In fact, sometimes the lightsticks from the group that are performing are outnumbered by other groups' lightsticks. This is apparently a taboo in Korea and to a lesser extent in Europe and America. It's apparently considered disrespectful there to bring a lightstick from a different group. But in Australia, it's very common and accepted to bring a lightstick from a different group to a concert. And in fact, never have I ever brought the same lightstick as the group I'm going to a concert. I own 4 lightsticks, ATEEZ, 17, TXT, and Zero Base 1. And this is a lot of lightsticks, but I've never seen any of these groups, and I've taken a lightstick to every single concert I've gone to, so... well, let's just say I have a lot of fun matching the best lightstick to the group. For example, I've got the Zero Base 1 lightstick, Dreamcatcher got the ATEEZ one, and Billlie got the 17 one. The 17 one is by far my most used since it has an app which controls both the colour and the brightness, so I can happily adjust it to the colours of the group I'm seeing. It also nicely fits into my ATEEZ lightstick carry bag, which protects it very nicely, and the carrot bong has a nice heft to it, unlike TXT and ATEEZ's lightsticks, which are super light and almost flimsy. Finally, dynamic pricing. This is a bit of a weird one. First, I'll explain for those of you who, like me, didn't really know what this was. Dynamic pricing is when the pricing of a ticket can be increased at the discretion of, I don't know, the ticket company? The company providing the event? Either way, someone somewhere can increase the ticket price based on relatively arbitrary ideas of how in demand they are, such as if the event or ticket type is perceived to be popular, or whether it's an aisle seat or whatever else. This can lead to some insane increases in prices. I mean like an extra $500 American insane. I see a lot of American and European fans complain about the dynamic pricing of K-pop concerts in those regions, but this is where the oddness comes in, because dynamic pricing isn't banned in Australia, and I know that other events here have had dynamic pricing, which has upset Australian consumers, but I've never seen dynamic pricing for a K-pop concert, and like I said, it's not banned here, so I don't know why or how it doesn't exist here, but I am thankful nonetheless. The Australian Consumer and Competition Commission, or the ACCC, looks into suspicious or non-transparent pricing, but that doesn't actually mean dynamic pricing is banned. I have seen a few concerts with slightly more expensive aisle tickets. I think 2024 Stray Kids might have been one of them, but when I say slightly more expensive, I mean like $20 AUD more expensive, and they were advertised as different tickets, so I don't feel too bad about that. There have been talks in late 2024 and 2025 about banning dynamic pricing in Australia, but nothing has come of it yet as far as I'm aware. The dynamic pricing seems to be more in the upfront prices the companies set. More popular groups have more expensive VIP packages, but that's about it. I also wrote a big long section of the script here rambling about how much I like Sydney trains, and how easy it is to get to the 4 main K-pop concert locations, Moore Park, Darling Harbour, Town Hall and Olympic Park, via public transport. But I decided not to include it because it basically exposed where I live. The main takeaway is that if you have access to any main connecting station in Sydney, getting to and from events is very easy. Sydney may have far from the best public transport in the world, but it's rapidly getting better, especially with the metro and light rails creating more connections. Yes, you have to change transport multiple times, but I would argue it's still pretty efficient, certainly in comparison to what I hear about the US, where cars reign supreme. Sydney also has the common sense to add extra transport services when a big event happens. This extra public transport, as was added for Stray Kids' performance at Allianz Stadium in 2024, is something that does happen for artists performing at Qudos as well. Olympic Park Station pretty much only services the showgrounds and stadiums in that area, and has its own lonely two-stop dedicated train line, so the train announcers for that line have nothing to do except announce K-pop concerts when they happen, I guess. Qudos is a small trek from the station, so station staff will announce where fans new to the area need to go to get to the concert. Very polite. However, I've never known of extra services being run because of K-pop concerts specifically at Qudos, except maybe Blackpink or G-Dragon. I suppose I don't go to Olympic Park when there aren't events happening there, so I wouldn't know what it's normally like. Australia and Sydney have got really good at ferrying fans to and from events using public transport, and this also applies to K-pop. Do you guys remember those videos of fans after Taylor Swift politely lining up and filing into trains, and Americans were shocked that people actually took public transport to concerts? Yeah, well, that was Olympic Park Station, and that's the fan attitude after concerts in Sydney. If our public transport is convenient, and often it is, fans will take it rather than paying $30 and dealing with traffic for parking. Okay, maybe I am a little proud of Sydney's public transport. Just a little. We still have lots of issues, and my local bus still doesn't show up like 30% of the time. The beauty of having access to a major connecting station is 1. I have access to both the above ground trains and the metro. 2. I have access to express trains to the city which stop at major stations but not many other stations, and thus 3. That I have relatively easy and quick journeys to concerts. I usually spend no more than 45 minutes to an hour in transit, and that's including the extra time I allow myself for anxiety reasons. So yeah, not to boast, but nice and convenient. Anyway, as in many places, fans come from far and wide to see concerts here. Sydney gets lots of fans from Brisbane especially, and other Australian cities. When groups come to Australia, they will come to Sydney, right? They usually go to Melbourne and very rarely go to Brisbane, but this means that most of our capital cities are neglected. People from Canberra could drive or fly down, and we get lots of people flying in from Brisbane, Perth, and New Zealand. We also get a decent number of people flying in from wider Oceania. This means a lot of people who don't know how to use Sydney's public transport system, and I've spent a decent amount of time trying to help people out in terms of getting to concerts. So let me bestow some wisdom upon you, the lucky few of you who listened to all of my insane train ranting. Here's your reward. TripView. Whether you come to Sydney for a holiday, a concert, work, or something else, get TripView. Get TripView! TripView is a lifesaver, and while travelling at the end of 2024, I was horrified that other cities didn't really have their own equivalent. TripView allows you to plan trips, view alerts and updates, and view real-time trip data for all of Sydney's public transit. And by all, I mean all. You can view and create trips using above-ground trains, the metro, buses, ferries, light rails, regional trains and buses, regional coaches, and school buses, both city and regional. You can save and manage timetables, you can search by stations and routes, you can view maps, you can even track the current position of your bus or train. But be warned, when you don't have access to that, it's probably a ghost bus. TripView can help you get anywhere and everywhere, and I've used it for every single concert I've gone to. Even though I know my way around Sydney and know the vast majority of timetables that are relevant to me, I still use TripView on an almost daily basis to help me keep on top of delays and other events. It's been so long since I got it that I don't remember, but I do think that it costs a few dollars. Either way though, it's 100% worth it, and it's a 10 out of 10 app that I can't recommend enough. This video isn't sponsored by TripView, but if they wanted to sponsor me for some reason, I would 1000% take the deal. Alright, with all of that, hopefully at least somewhat interesting ranting over, let's get back to the start of 2025 and look at the first concert I went to, Billlie. First up, Billlie, who awkwardly enough were touring at the same time as Billie Eilish, leading to every person I talked to asking me if I was seeing Billie Eilish. Billlie performed at the Metro Theatre on the 23rd of February 2025. This was the first concert I'd gone to at the Metro Theatre, a concert venue with a capacity of around 1,300 people near Town Hall. And it was also the first concert I'd gone to with no seats, so I was curious about what to expect. Okay, so time for some background. I took my 17 light stick. I did my crystal makeup thing and headphone ribbons based on November, the heterochromatic cat from their storyline, aka blue right side, purple left side. And Billlie were, as you possibly already knew, a group that I'm interested in but don't necessarily follow closely. Before I bought tickets, I knew I liked a few of their songs, and I knew that I liked Suyeon since she was one of my picks on Girls Planet and thus was the one who introduced me to the group. I also knew who Moonswa was and, of course, Suki, but I didn't know any of the other members. As you may expect from the above, I bought the least expensive ticket, aka general admission, which was about $110 AUD after the processing fee. In preparation for this concert, I obviously learned the other members' names and faces, and listened to more of their music, watched their variety shows, and so on. I don't think Suyeon will ever be toppled from my biased position, but I have to say that I did really like the other Suyeon. I got to the concert maybe 5 hours early to queue. That sounds bad. It was somewhat coincidental. I went to a fencing competition before the concert and there was literally no point going home before it, so yeah. This left me pretty close to the start of the GA line, but that didn't really matter because the Metro Theatre has tiered standing areas anyway, so I got a good view and was maybe 10 meters away from Suyeon, so I'll take that as a win. I coincidentally ended up on her side of the stage too! Woo! I thought the venue was pretty good and had a nice underground vibe, but there weren't any hooks on the back of the bathroom doors, which is a massive downside. We also had to queue in an alleyway which was full of rotting garbage and, as you can probably imagine, smelled terrible. This was my first time at a smaller venue and I really enjoyed the venue itself. The staff were efficient, helpful and nice to me, although I don't know if it was really accessible. As far as the concert itself, I enjoyed it a lot. The atmosphere was pretty good and most of the people there seemed to be having a great time. In fact, everyone except for the one sour-looking VIP beside me seemed to be having a great time. The girls were all very engaged, especially Suki, who was the queen of fan service. I found some more of their songs I enjoy and enjoyed seeing their choreography live. Unfortunately, they didn't perform Ring Ring, which was one of the few songs I actually wanted to see, but they performed everything else that I was looking forward to. This was the first and only concert I've been to that had an intermission, which was interesting, and could have easily broken the momentum of the concert, but which was a nice break for an easily tired out introvert like me. This was also the concert I've been to that had the most Aussies. It was insane. I don't know if this happens in other places, but as I'm sure you can imagine, idols seem to really like doing Aussie whenever they come to Australia, and seem to find it hilarious that the crowd actually follows the chant. Hence, it's mandatory at almost every concert. But at the Billlie concert, not only did the group Aussie a lot, but so did the fans, and they also Billied, and they did this a lot. It was so constant that towards the end, not only were the girls behind me commenting about it, but there was always awkward laughter after someone started a chant. Like, I think everyone was just a bit sick of it. Overall fun concert, I'll rate it 7 out of 10. I wish there were seats and a less smelly alleyway, but the concert itself was good and energetic. Some background. I took my AT's lightstick. I love Dreamcatcher's lightstick and I think it's one of the best ones in the industry, but I've never actually been into them enough to buy it, since it is one of the most expensive ones. So I figured AT's was my next best option. I did my crystal makeup based off of Gaehyun's mask prop in Scream, which I think is pretty cool, and was one of my first introductions to Dreamcatcher. I didn't know tons about Dreamcatcher before I bought a ticket. I knew who Dami was, and I knew a bunch of their songs and liked said songs, with one of my first musical interests being J-rock and J-pop, so of course I'd be interested in Dreamcatcher. I've also watched several times this brilliant mini doco by Mira, Dodging Disbandment and Other Extreme Sports, which I think is brilliant, and is also in my recommended video essays playlist. but I didn't know any of the other members' names and faces. Keeping in line with the above, I bought the lowest price ticket, which for Dreamcatcher was about $120 AUD. In preparation for the concert, I obviously learned more about the group and watched their variety shows, etc. I also, of course, learned the members and their names. I've decided, as you may have guessed, that I like Gahyun. Her stage presence is immaculate, and I think she really enjoys being on stage, which is something that I seem to really like in my biases. Now, I'll talk about this more at the end of this segment, but the concert itself was nice. What really soured the experience for both me and the other fans was the terrible, seriously abysmal organisation of this concert. To start with, when tickets first went live, there were only 3 options: SVIP, VIP, and GA, all standing. Okay, fine. I was confused because I knew that Town Hall had seated sections, but bought a GA ticket anyway. I later found out, about 3 days before the concert, that not only had early entry GA tickets been added, but so had SVIP, VIP early entry and GA tickets for the balcony area, which would be seated. These tickets had not been originally released and hadn't been announced when they were released, so very few people knew about them to begin with. I was quite salty about this, but I wasn't going to buy another ticket for a group that isn't one of my alts anyway, and balcony seats had sold out anyway by that point. To make matters worse, a few days before the Melbourne concert, it was announced that 3 members, Dami, Gahyun and Hundong, weren't renewing their contracts, which put a real damper on the entire Australian leg of the tour, and especially on the Melbourne concert. Also, a few days before the concert, they released one-on-one member snapshots. Get your photo taken with a member of your choice doing one of 4 set poses, and they were $150 AUD each. $150 each! This wasn't a big concern for me because I wasn't enough of a fan to get one, but I felt bad for the fans who were the target audience. So I came to the concert and lined up about 2.5 hours early and stood around with a whole bunch of other people suffering in the 30+ degree sun. When I got in, I went straight to the bathroom and incidentally found out there was no place to fill up water bottles. Now the bathrooms spat me out right next to the stage, like literally within an arm's length of it. I thought, okay, sweet, I'll be close to them. But then I noticed a barricade which marked that section off, presumably to avoid congestion. So, being conscientious, I went backwards to a spot probably 10 meters away from the stage. I'm pretty short, so I knew from the start I'd be pretty doomed here, but this 10-meter spot was pretty decent. I would probably be able to see the girls from the knees up. Then 2 super tall dudes pushed in and stood in front of me, so I moved backwards maybe 20 meters away, again had a decent spot, and again tall dudes pushed in front of me. In the end, I ended up right at the back of the hall with a column blocking my view of one side of the stage and a tall guy blocking part of the center of it. And yeah, I could see most of what I needed to, and had plenty of space to move around to follow the action and put my bags down, but let's just say I was salty that I'd been pretty much pushed that far back, and there was literally 0 point in me queuing for 2.5 hours at that point. Not to mention how everyone was obsessed with raising their light sticks far above their heads, further blocking the view, and the tall guy in front of me filmed a good chunk of the concert with, you guessed it, his hands way above his head. Incidentally, the guy next to me also went for 3 smoke breaks during the concert and came back reeking every time. And I know it's bad if I can smell it through my mask. To make me even more salty, I noticed about halfway through the concert that even though the side of the stage had been barricaded off, fans had still gone into that area, so I could have stayed there anyway. And that was the side of the stage that Gahyun was always on. She even threw her mask to that side. Now, wanting Gahyun to chuck her mask at me is potentially, masochistic, but considering my makeup was literally the mask, I was salty that I'd done the right thing and suffered because of it, and now people were doing the wrong thing and being rewarded. Where's the justice? Now, I am a short person, and I knew this would happen if the concert was on a flat surface, hence why I will literally never get a standing ticket if I can avoid it, even for ATs. Like I said, even for my alt groups like ATs, I can't imagine getting a standing ticket if there's seated options. And even if it's seated, I wouldn't go on the floor because people are still going to stand up on the floor anyway and I'm not going to be able to see anything. But there wasn't a seated option for this concert when I'd first bought my ticket. More on that later. As far as the organisation of the concert itself, maybe a third of the songs played were Christmas songs. In March. Sure, all of these songs were nice, and as someone pointed out after the concert, every song is someone's favourite, but this was odd and out of theme to the point that Sua said Merry Christmas and then awkwardly laughed to herself. Like, we didn't get Vision or Black and White, but we did get like 5 Christmas songs? What? Now, obviously I wasn't a VIP, but I did hear several complaints from VIPs after the concerts, including that the line system had been confused and poorly managed, that there was poor communication after the concert about send-off events and one-on-one photos, and thus a big delay between these events, and that the merch had been poorly organised, signposted and delivered. A lot of people apparently came away without the merch they'd paid for because of whatever system was used to hand this out. And if that's how the VIPs are treated, well, it's not good, let's just say that. While lining up, VIPs had also been bombarded with the screams of a far-right Christian guy who was staging a protest for hours on end, which, like, actually now that I think about it, that's like kind of hilarious for a Dreamcatcher concert. And on my train home, some people got told off for having sex on the train, so those two things just added to the oddness of the day. To put the final nail in the coffin, you remember the seated tickets and how they'd been released late without being advertised, and how I didn't buy one because I didn't want to spend double the money on almost the same experience? Well, I found out after the concert from other fans, not from Box Live who ran the show, that they had actually been offering refunds for people who wanted to get their standing tickets converted to seated tickets. So I could have got a seated ticket for no extra price, and could have suffered far less and had a better concert experience overall, except for the terrible management and advertising of the new tickets by Box Live. Oddly enough, I haven't heard any complaints about Box Live for years, but from the end of 2024 onwards, I'd been hearing lots of complaints about them, so goodness knows what was going on there. Anyway, putting aside the management and my own bad experience, as well as the odd choice to have lots of Christmas songs and theming, the concert itself was great. I'd heard that the girls had been pretty depressed in Melbourne after the announcement of the contracts not being renewed, and with all of the fans being stressed about this potentially being the last chance to see Dreamcatcher in Australia. But in Sydney, both the fans and the members seemed far happier and more energetic. The girls did a great job with what they were given, and the energy nicely ramped up over the course of the concert. They also did the whole one more time thing over and over. I wasn't aware that this was a thing that any group other than 17 and their never-ending Aju Nice did, and although I would have preferred Aju Nice, I did still enjoy experiencing a never-ending encore, during which the girls clearly had a lot of fun one more timing and even got the fans to dance on camera too, which was nice. Also, of course, I did enjoy seeing many of their songs which I had appreciated from a distance previously live, and Kaihan was unsurprisingly great. In the end, I'll give this concert a 4 out of 10. If the management had been better, it would probably have been a 7 or 8 out of 10, but the poor management affected my experience so much that I've had to bump it down significantly. Okay, background for this concert. I took my Zero Base 1 light stick for obvious reasons. However, oddly enough, a Zero Base 1 Reddit census showed that actually not a lot of Zero Base 1 fans are even fans. In the end, I only saw about 4 other Zero Base 1 light sticks at the concert. However, this does actually make sense. Most Zero Base 1 fans are probably fans from Boys Planet who became fans because their pick or one of their picks made the group. And if your one pick made the group, you're probably a fan, right? But to be a fan of both EVNNE and Zero Base 1 for that reason, you'd have to have had both a pick that made it into Zero Base 1 and a pick that made it into EVNNE. Obviously, people follow either or both groups for reasons outside of their one picks or top picks being in them, but that reason would probably be the largest one. Hence, it makes sense that very few Zero Base 1 fans would be EVNNE fans. The other thing is, like, I talked to several people at the concert, and actually a good chunk of the people at the EVNNE concert hadn't even watched Boys Planet. Like, they were just fans, like, they just stumbled upon the group, I suppose, normally as such. So, like, a whole bunch of them didn't even know who Zero Base One were, which was funny. I, however, was a big fan of Keita and Hanbin on Boys Planet and thought both of them were mega robbed by not being in Zero Base One. And I also liked Seungin and Jihyo, so I had followed EVNNE since debut, even though I wasn't particularly dedicated to the group. The concert made me check out their newer title tracks and other songs, and I found out that I really like their music. I also, of course, learned who the other 3 members were. Now, this concert had a really cheap SVIP ticket for Australia, around $280 AUD, so I decided to get an SVIP ticket just to see what kind of experience it was, and to know whether I would find it worth it to potentially pay more for VIP if an alt group of mine came to Australia. This scheme of mine was like a billion% worth it, because now I have a knowledge of what that experience is like, which is one of the reasons why I've decided not to get VIP for ATs. If I hadn't done this, I would have been more uncertain in my decision, and it probably would have caused me a lot of anxiety. EVNNE have colours for each member, and since I don't really have a favourite member, I decided to go with yellow and black. Yellow is Jihyo's colour, and they also have a line in Trouble saying yellow and black, so it seemed fitting. I also grabbed some moon and star-shaped crystals to use, since EVNNE are apparently evening's newest étoiles, you know? In preparation for the concert, like I said, I learned the names and faces of the other 3 members and listened to their B-sides, since I'd only ever heard their title tracks, which was a good experience since I found out that I like almost all of their songs. Even though I'm far from EVNNE's biggest fan, I was determined to make the most of the SVIP experience and to get the full experience. So when I found out we were allowed to write letters, I, of course, wrote a letter. Which I should have taken a picture of, but I basically wrote that I was really happy they all got to debut after all of their hard work, and that I knew tours could be really hard, so I hoped they took care of themselves and were always happy and healthy. Pretty generic stuff, I guess, but like, I do hope for them to be happy and healthy, so of course I was going to write that. And I am happy that they debuted, and I am happy for their hard work and the hard work of their staff. Yeah, I didn't mention this, but I thanked their staff in the letter. On the day, I obviously had to go there earlier since as an SVIP I got access to soundcheck. Wow. This was good, except for the fact that it was raining. When I got there maybe half an hour before the doors opened for SVIPs, there was already a very large line, and in the end I reckon that maybe 75% or more of attendees to this concert were SVIP or VIP, which is insane. I'd like to thank the security guard who was managing the lines and checking IDs for being epic. He was super helpful and friendly and seemed very excited to chat to people and answer their questions. He also sang a few songs in Korean, but I don't think any of them were EVNNE or even K-pop songs. Anyway, after surviving all of the rain and discovering through my scratch card that I didn't win either a signed poster or a set of signed photo cards, we entered and we were rushed through the front hall of the venue, which was irritating since it meant that I missed the cloakroom and thus had to take a picture with the group with my entire massive backpack on my lap. It was a bit unfortunate since I've never been part of a group photo with a group before, and I obviously didn't like how we were rushed so much through the photo that I neither got to prepare myself to make myself presentable, and how I and the other fans didn't really get to interact with the members at all. But this is a relatively expected part of these kinds of events. It's well known that staff rush fans to the ends of the earth. It's just unfortunate that we weren't directed to cloaking at all, and that it had been so rainy and windy outside, so everyone's hair was ruined. Anyway, on the bright side, as we were rushed through the hallway, I did get the chance to drop off my letter to a staff member and to be given both a Keshki fan project banner and a set of unsigned photo cards, which was nice. I really like events where there are fan project banners and also where the groups give out specific photo cards for each region. P1 Harmony also gave out 2 random free photo cards to each fan at their concert in 2024 and 1 random photo card to each fan in 2025. And sure, these photo cards are pretty bland, but it's still a nice little memento to have. So I won't show my photo here for privacy reasons, but I can say that I sat in front of Hanbin. Fun fact. One thing that I just remembered is, like, I've seen a lot of posts lately of people talking about how idols look in real life and how there's some that look very different and how there's some that look very similar and all of that. I just want to confirm, even look literally exactly the same in person. Like, however they look on their stages or variety shows or in music videos, exactly the same. There's no like, oh, one of them is like insanely more handsome or like arguably less handsome in person or whatever. There's no like, oh, one of them is like super skinny in person or one of them super buff or something like that. There's like, oh, what's her name? Is it Cian from StayC? On screen, she just looks like her. In person, she really looks like Shana from Girls Planet, but all of the EVNNE members just look exactly like they look in their music videos. The only thing is, I can confirm, having been up close and personal with them, they do have acne. There you go, idols are human, what a shocker. But they all look exactly the same, like literally carbon copies of what they look like in their music videos and stuff. Anyway, after this photo, I went looking for cloaking, which led to the second mediocre experience of the night, as the first staff member I talked to said there was no cloaking, which I told her was odd since Box Live had announced there would be limited cloaking. After talking to a few people and waiting around for a bit, a staff member did take me back to cloaking, which was nice. But the main reason I bring this up, other than to critique the lack of communication between staff members, is that while I was standing around waiting for someone to get back to me, I had a nice side-on view of the members taking photos with the other fans. And there was a gap in the group of fans coming in, during which, I kid you not, Hanbin looked over at me, smiled and waved, and giggled when I waved back. Insane. As you can tell from the rest of my channel, I am, as I say, pretty anti-Delulu. I mean, I talk tons about parasocial relationships and how your idols aren't actually buddies with you and don't know you exist. But like, when Hanbin waved at me, I think I got cured of my anti-Delulu-ness, and I think I'm pretty Delulu now. He and I are clearly best buddies. On a related note, I am so glad that Hanbin got to debut. I was pretty upset when he and Keita didn't make it into Zero Base 1, and while Keita had previously debuted and was spoken for by the mentors, Hanbin wasn't, outside of getting the Most Improved award, so I was a bit worried about him. But he seems to be thriving in EVNNE. He's their pseudo-center and he has an amazing passion for dance and performing. He looked so happy to be there, and he's also a fan service king. I don't think he took a break from interacting with fans and fan servicing the entire night. Even when it wasn't his part in a song, he'd be dancing but still smiling at and pointing to fans, or completing finger hearts and so on. While the members were giving out their ments at the end of the night, he was dancing to Gnarly and handing out Aegir poses like it was nothing. It was insane, and it was also hilarious to watch. After he waved at me, he got bored and started waving to other fans who were behind the screen, and of course caused them to freak out. Like, he kind of like stuck his nose through the screen. Trust me, from my angle it looked hilarious. Anyway, I was really happy to see Hanbin thriving. Speaking of Hanbin being energetic and happy to be there, one thing I really appreciated about this concert was that all of the members seemed pretty happy and healthy, and excited to be there. I mean, sure, this could have just been an act, but it seemed genuine. I don't know about other fans, but I have far more fun at concerts when the group looks like they're having fun too. But when the group looks like the concert is a chore, well, it feels like a chore for me too. For instance, aespa and Stray Kids in 2024 looked like they wanted to leave, with the sole exception of Han. In contrast, Stray Kids in 2023 and P1 Harmony in 2024 both looked like they were really excited to be performing. World tours are hard on artists, both physically and mentally, so it's completely understandable for them to look dead inside. But I think it just makes me respect the artists who look happy even more, since they look happy and can seemingly get some enjoyment out of tours even if they're tired. Hence, I really appreciate how happy Even looked at this concert. Even Yunso, who looked really tired, was still smiling the whole time and giving thankful looks to fans. Now, venue. Overall, I'd say the venue was pretty good. It wasn't as good as the Metro Theatre since it didn't have tiered standing areas, but it did have a small raised area to the side where the bar was, and this was where I planted myself. This meant that I was further away from the members than literally every other VIP or SVIP, and that I was off to the side and didn't get a front-on view, but I did get tons of space to myself, a table to put my bag on and lean on, and a nice clear view of the stage over the top of everyone's heads, so I was happy. Also, the area was partially lit during soundcheck, which clearly made me and the girls next to me more salient to the members, since most of them looked directly at us and waved, which is more than could be said for lots of people in the crowd. In fact, they clearly had such a good view of us that Hanbin noticed the girl next to me was drinking a cocktail and mimed like basically inhaling the whole thing. What's it called? Basically taking a shot, but like for her entire glass of alcohol. And then he laughed at her, which was her YN moment of the night. Like, she was stoked. Speaking of that girl, she won the signed photo card set but only wanted her bias, so she was nice enough to give me a Cater one and to give me a Jihu card from the I Heart K-pop event that she'd gone to, which was nice. While I'm thanking people who were nice enough to give me stuff, I'll also thank the fans who organised the banner project and the girls in line who gave me an even phone case charm. Ah, K-pop fans. Some of them may be insane, but most of them are wonderfully nice and caring. Okay, as far as soundcheck, they performed 3 songs, but I think the real highlight was the interaction with fans in a more intimate setting. I also liked how they talked about having explored Sydney the previous day, and told a story about Junghyun being approached by a fan, who had apologised before showing him a Hanbin photo card she had, and predictably, that fan was in the audience. Hilarious. Hanbin was of course flattered, and said that he'd chased after her to take a photo with her. Anyway, they clearly got lucky because the weather that day was supposed to be super stormy but had been miraculously clear. Just for even, you know? So, soundcheck was fun and the actual concert was fun too. They seemed to have had a lot of fun on stage and with the audience, and the whole concert was upbeat and exciting. I think this was partially because almost every song they performed had a choreography, and because their songs are generally high energy. The crowd also was super into it and bouncing around like they were at a rave the whole time. Also, kudos to the crowd for being, as far as I could see, pretty respectful of each other and the members. They weren't pushing each other, and there were minimal signs, phones, and light sticks held up in other people's faces. Also, a thank you to the translator, who I'm pretty sure I've run into at several events by now. He obviously did a great job, and I love translators in general. One thing I did think was fun during this concert was that they had a VCR during which all of the members were trying to fix a car they found in a garage, right? And first of all, I bet none of the members know the first thing about fixing a car. Second, I found it highly unrealistic that none of them ended up with grease all over them while doing it. This is also odd from a company standpoint, because aren't dudes covered in car grease supposed to be hot? I mean, it's not for me, but like, isn't that something that people like? Anyway, I thought this VCR was really fun, not so much because of the actual content of the VCR, but because of the way the fans reacted to it. I think this is the first concert I've been to where fans were so reactive to a VCR. First, when one of the members, I think from memory it was Hanbin, was working so hard at night that he fell asleep on his desk, someone, I think Yunso, came up to him and covered him in a blanket and then went to work himself, and everyone went, "Aww." And then when the group got the car working, everyone in the audience seriously and legitimately cheered, and not just a quiet like, yay! Like, these fans were serious about the fact that the car was working, and seriously happy that it was, which was cute, you know. So, I don't have much else to say outside of the fact that the concert was fun and I enjoyed it. The girl who stood next to me for most of it, a different girl from the one who gave me the photo card, and I had some fun conversations, and most of all, I was really happy that I had such a good and open view of the concert. Having a good and clear view seems to be something that makes or breaks a concert for me. That's foreshadowing, accidentally. Send-off was also, as you'd expect, rushed, but it was still nice to be able to walk past each member, make eye contact, and thank each one. This was the second send-off I've done after Sejong, and I have to say, I really like them. I think they're relatively low effort for the artists who just need to smile and wave, but they're still really special moments for the fans, and I think they add a lot to the whole night, even if it's literally just the send-off where you just walk past and say hi. Especially for smaller artists who only have a few hundred to 1,000 fans at a concert, it makes sense to have send-off for all fans if possible, and like I said, I think it's really worth it from both a fan and an idol perspective. I got there and back via train and then light rail, except there was track works, so instead of one train and a light rail, it was 2 trains and a light rail on the way there, and a light rail, a train, and then a bus on the way home. Still pretty convenient, honestly. Overall, I'd give this concert a 9 out of 10. Even without the VIP experience, I think I would have had a really fun time. EVNNE said they'd come back in 2 years, and although I'm doubtful about that, considering their supposedly short contract and status as a project group, I can say that if they do come back, I'm definitely going again. And I'm thankful I got the SVIP experience for a group, so now I know what to expect. As you can probably tell, I wrote that section just after I'd gone to the concert. It's since been announced that EVNNE will be becoming a permanent group. They haven't announced yet which members are re-signing and which ones aren't, but the fact that they're becoming a permanent group indicates that they will have the potential to come back, and I really hope they do. I just really want them to add Gunnock to the group and then they can come back. Please, Jellyfish! I'll love you forever! Okay, background. I took my Zero Base 1 lightstick since I figure StayC are a pretty flowery group. Unluckily for me, this was the single concert I didn't take spare batteries to, and the lightstick died about a quarter of the way through the concert. I didn't know much about StayC in advance of the concert. I couldn't even recognise all of them, although I did do my best to study in the lead up to the concert. I have known of Sian and Yoon for years, since I'm an avid Tingle interview viewer, and I could pretty much recognise Isa and Jae. Hilariously enough, after the concert, I think Sumin is my bias, although Sian comes close. That said, I think I mostly like her because in person she looks like Shana from Lapalus, and I love Shana. I stuffed up for this one and didn't realise when the tickets went on sale. By the time I got there, all of the C Reserve tickets had sold out, so I had to pay an extra fee for a resale on Ticketek Marketplace, taking my final cost for this concert to $135 AUD, which was more than I wanted to spend. Hilariously enough, I also wrote down the wrong date for the actual concert. I wrote the Melbourne date, not the Sydney one, but thankfully realised that a few days before the concert, so I didn't miss it. But if I remember correctly, I had to emergency take time off work, which was a shame. I went with a pink theme for this concert since I feel like pink suits StayC. Not that exciting, but I did manage to forget to take a picture of myself. Good job, Casper. Okay, so the concert itself. This was my first concert in Hordern Pavilion, so I didn't realise that when I bought the ticket, which was positioned here, that I would literally have to crane my neck about 80 degrees to the left at all times to see the stage. I got really unlucky with this one. This side seating is even longer than the other side, which means that I basically had the second worst seat in the house. The only people worse off than me were the people further to the front, who ironically, despite being closer to the stage and thus probably paying more, would have had to have turned their heads even further to see the stage. There would also be a few people here at the front of the back seating who would have had views blocked by the camera, but they get the benefit of having a front-on view and also being able to see the cameras and the sound desks. One of my favourite things to do during concerts is to look at the cameras and the sound desk, so I was still kind of jealous of them. I'll talk more about this seating in the next section when I talk about P1 Harmony. Anyway, the actual concert itself was very good, although sorry StayC fans, I don't have much to say about it. They played all of the songs that I wanted to see, they were nicely in sync with each other, and they interacted well with the audience. As I've said earlier in this video and on this channel, the thing I value most in an idol and their group is their enthusiasm for the stage and performing. That's the thing that leads me to my biases, and is the prime thing that helps me enjoy a concert. Boy groups, in my experience, seem to enjoy concerts and touring on average more than girl groups, but I don't know if that's down to the groups that I've personally seen. Some idol image thing where girl groups are supposed to be pretty rather than crazy and enthusiastic, or just potentially my own internalized misogyny. But regardless, girl groups seem less enthusiastic than boy groups in general. Billlie were one exception, and StayC are another. The girls all seemed super happy to be there and interacted well with the audience. Cian especially made an effort to engage the audience with funny stories and to speak in English as much as possible. Sumin and Yoon were two other standout members for being engaged. No one looked like it was a chore for them to be there performing. Hence, I enjoyed it a lot more. I mostly wanted to go to StayC because I enjoy their music and some of their choreography, but I was really impressed by the members' attitudes and engagement, and I think I'll be following them more in the future. Also, I wanted to mention a highlight, which was that everyone cheered really loudly for Beautiful Monster. Beautiful Monster was the song that got me into StayC, and I fully intend to make a best songs video about it. So I was horrified when I heard that so many of their fans hated it and left the fandom because of it. The Australian crowd seemed to like it though, which made me happy. That said though, this crowd was slightly dead, and there was an odd lack of light sticks. I can't really complain about this since I myself am way too shy to scream, and thus am silent at concerts, and since my light stick ran out of battery, but the girls behind me were complaining. And considering almost everyone there was probably a bigger StayC fan than me, why so quiet, people? Oh, here's a fun story, I guess. On the way home, I noticed the light rail would be super packed. This is pretty normal after concerts, and I had seen a video somewhere, probably like on Instagram, about how you can skip the packing by taking the light rail or train one stop in the opposite direction, then getting on an empty train. A hack to get a seat, right? I thought I was so smart hopping on the opposite light rail instead of trying to shove myself onto the busy one, but I'd miscalculated one thing. I didn't realise that the next stop, EVNNE, was quite far away, and it was late at night, so light rail frequency was reduced. On my journey to EVNNE, we passed not just the next light rail I should have taken, but the next two. So when we got there, I'd missed 2 light rails, and the next one was in 20 minutes. Wow, some hack, Casper. On the bright side, it looked like about 5 other fans made the same mistake as me, so I sat sad and in the cold, regretting my choices for the next 20 minutes, at which point I could get back on the light rail and then on the metro home, where I bought myself some chocolate as consolation. Oh dear. So, a rating. Honestly, I enjoyed this concert about as well as the Billlie one, but thinking about it, I can't really think of one to put above. Both were groups that I was kind of interested in but not a fan of, and both concerts put these groups on my radar more for both their music and the members' attitudes. Both were overall very fun concerts, but both had their disadvantages. Billlie was a standing concert and it rained while we were queuing in the gross alleyway, and StayC had poor seating arrangements. By the way, none of these were the faults of the group. I think I'll put Billlie slightly above StayC, but they may as well be the same. Hence, I'll give StayC a 7 out of 10 and I'll bump Billlie up to an 8 out of 10. Okay, this one was a bit of a wild ride. I think I've said previously on this channel that I used to just enjoy P1 Harmony's music casually, but I wasn't really a fan of them. However, I did decide to go to their concert in Sydney in 2024, and enjoyed that concert so much that they became an alt group of mine. They said then that they'd come back to Sydney in 2025, and I believed them, since they'd come yearly since 2022, but I was slightly worried when we got further and further through 2025 and the concert hadn't been announced, especially since they'd barely sold 50% of their seats in the ICC in 2024. Thankfully, the concert was finally announced for August 23rd. Not so thankfully, they were only coming to Sydney, and they were skipping Brisbane, Melbourne and Auckland, meaning that I knew fans from all over Australia and Oceania would be flocking to this single concert. Even worse, when the concert venue was finally announced, it was Hordern Pavilion, which was where they had performed in 2023, and with a capacity of about 5,500, nowhere near enough for all of their Oceanian fans. Fans obviously weren't pleased with this, especially since there were very few VIP benefits, and since tickets were surprisingly expensive considering that. A reserve was $300 when it's usually around $250 maximum for K-pop concerts, and VIP was $430 for basically soundcheck and that's it. Yep. It was also a fully seated concert, so it's not even like you'd get the chance to be closer to the front queue-wise by being VIP. Anyway, as much as I love P1 Harmony, I wasn't keen on VIP with so few benefits, being so expensive while also being on the floor, aka harder for me, a shorty to see. So my goal was a nice A reserve ticket. Unfortunately for me, there were 25,000 people in front of me in the queue. I miraculously made it in and was offered an A reserve ticket, but stupidly decided I wanted something closer to the stage and rejected it, by which time all A reserve tickets were sold and I was left with a B reserve ticket on the side, which I thought was a perfectly acceptable ticket, until I went to Hordern Pavilion for the first time to see StayC that night and realised I'd be craning my neck the whole time. If only that ticket sale had been a single day later! P1 Harmony predictably sold out in about an hour, so I couldn't just go back and get another ticket, so I was forced to sit in Ticketek Marketplace waiting for a decent seat at the back of the hall. I was eventually able to find a nice A reserve one, but technical issues combined with the incredibly competitive marketplace status of the concert meant that I didn't get it, and was left with a B reserve ticket several rows further back and slightly off to the side. And while this is annoying, I don't think I ended up being in too bad of a position considering I was able to sell my original ticket to someone else, and considering I ended up with a decent view where I didn't have to crane my neck constantly and could see the sound desk, and considering how many P1 Harmony fans were left without tickets considering the tiny capacity of the venue. At least I got a ticket at all, right? Right? Ahem. We'll see. Anyway, I took my 17 light stick. I took it last year and appreciated that it could change colours to match the P1 Harmony light sticks, so I took it again. So in the end, I spent around $230 AUD for my ticket, and thankfully didn't lose any money in the ticket resale. My outfit theme was red, which is also the theme that I had for my face crystals and headphones. Unfortunately for me, the eyelash glue I used to attach the crystals gave me a skin reaction. Very odd considering I'd literally used that eyelash glue before and hadn't had any reaction to it. In the end, I had marks on my face in the shape of the crystals for... I wrote well over a week here, but I only wrote this about a week after the concert. I think I actually had the marks on my face for about a month. In the end, I met up with a friend of mine who was seated in a different section, hence began the chaos of the concert. Okay, first of all, the VIP benefits for this concert were pretty terrible, which was one of the reasons I didn't buy a VIP ticket. Also, last year at the P1 Harmony concert, everyone got 2 photo cards. They weren't shuffled, so you got duplicates, but that was pretty easy to fix via trading. This year we only got 1 photo card, although we did also get a mini banner. Inconveniently, for most people at the concert, the photo cards again seemed unshuffled, and thus there would be a massive drought of certain members in your area depending on your entry time. Luckily for me, my entry time was when Jiyoung's cards were being handed out. Unluckily for my friend, he was also given a Jiyoung card, when his bias is Kiho. We did find an abandoned card on the ground, which was also a Jiyoung card. Unfortunately for my friend, neither he, I, or anyone I spoke to at the concert so much as saw a Kiho photo card. At this point, we're not even sure if Kiho photo cards were even printed, which is a shame considering I reckon about half of the crowd there had him as their bias. So overall, I really enjoyed the concert. P1 Harmony are one of my favourite groups for a reason, and that reason is how amazing their concerts are. Many groups I see look kind of dead inside, which makes sense. Like I've mentioned earlier, touring is hard, but P1 Harmony always look like they're delighted to be there, and that makes me enjoy it. Of course, I always think that Jiyoung looks like he's having the most fun, and he keeps the energy super high throughout the whole concert. Seriously, he was jumping around the stage for 2 hours straight. The fact that the group, and especially Jiyoung, always look like they're having fun performing is what makes me like them so much. I thought the overall setlist was very good, and this is feedback that I got from other fans as well, since it included most of the songs on the 2 albums, Sad Song and Duh, that they've released since they came here last, and also included some older classics like Black Hole and Countdown to Love. They also, of course, had their mandatory solo song segment, which is very predictable. Kiho will always do a conceptual vocal musical song, Theo will play a fake guitar and do a ballad, Jungsub will rap, Sol will do some wacko dance performance, Intak will borderline strip and hump the floor, and Jiyoung will do some upbeat song which gets everyone singing along. Jiyoung said last year that he likes picking popular songs that everyone will know the words to, so we can all party together. So last time he did Baby by Justin Bieber, and this time he did Uptown Funk. Very fun. Something else I appreciate about P1 Harmony is how, 1, they sing the vast majority of songs at the concert live, and 2, how hard they go with their concerts. The vast majority of songs also have intense choreographies, and yet all 6 of them keep the energy up the entire time. It's very impressive and really helps the mood stay high. Yes, they did have some songs which seemed lip-synced, which was a shame considering last year they sang the entire concert live, and the members vastly differ in their live singing dedication. While Jiyoung and Kiho almost always sing live, Sol seems to avoid the microphone like his life depends on it, which is fair considering he said that he just wants to dance. But honestly, I was pretty satisfied, especially considering K-pop artists have been lip-syncing more and more. Hilariously enough, P1 Harmony seemed to lip-sync the ballads, usually the one thing that is sung live, but they sang live during all of the songs with a choreography, showing off their stable performance skills, I guess. This did result in a hilarious moment that I'm surprised hasn't gone semi-viral when they sang Killin' It as part of the encore, and the sound cut out only a short way through. The fans egged them on to finish the rest of the song a cappella, and even though you could definitely tell their in-ears weren't working, the pace was uneven, they sounded slightly uncertain and made a few mistakes, they overall gave a very good performance that proved their live singing skills, and they then sang the song again with the music just for the point of it. So yeah, top tier concert as usual. I think they definitely knew about how much the company stuffed up the tour though, because Keo complained that they were in a small venue and asked the fans to put them in a bigger venue next year. He also asked fans complaining about the lack of a Melbourne concert to email FNC. The only gripe I had with the concert outside of wishing a few songs on the set list would have been a bit different is the lack of talking time. Last time they spent tons of time chatting and gossiping with the fans, which was really fun, since they all seemed to genuinely enjoy it. And while we had the same experience this year, there was less talking overall, which I thought was a shame. Finally, I had 2 things to say about the fans at the concert. 2 good things and 1 bad thing. First of all, I loved seeing how much the audience was having fun. When they did the mandatory "who's seen us before, who's coming for the first time" thing, it turns out that most people were seeing them for the first time, and they all seemed to be having a blast. In the row behind me was a group of about 8 Kiwi kids who had clearly flown over together with one of their dads, and those kids were seriously having the time of their life. I think they'll remember that concert forever. They were way too enthusiastic, and although their screaming gave me a headache, I was happy to see them having fun. During the opening VCR, when Sol used his crazy soul powers to divert an asteroid, one of them literally screamed, "What a man!" which made me laugh super hard. Because these kids brought their dad, I also got to have the hilarious experience of witnessing the man be possibly converted to Peacehood live. At the start of the concert, he was clearly unenthusiastic and went to the bathroom after failing to get the kids to stop screaming. But when the solos came, he actually started to get invested. He commented on how good Keo, Jungsub, and Sol were. Although he didn't seem to have any later epiphanies, he said the concert was fun, which gave me an obvious sense of satisfaction. Second, I wanted to point out the insane number of freebies that were given out. I don't think I've ever received that many. I was given a sherbet lemon, a mini keychain saying "duh," a Theo bracelet, a K-pop concert passport, some Delulu is the Salulu stickers, and a Jiyoung phone charm. Combined with the free photo card and the banner, I don't think I've ever come home so laden with freebies. So thank you everyone who made freebies for the concert. I now get to fill up my K-pop concert passport. The third thing is unfortunately the bad one. This was a seated venue, right? Like literally 100% seated. Now, I was expecting the VIPs to stand since the VIP area is lower than the stage, hence why I didn't buy VIP because I do my absolute best to avoid standing at concerts. My back and feet start to hurt horribly. Me needing a comfortable seated experience is also why I went to so much effort to get a good view, and my view was really good. I was very happy. Up until the girls in front of me decided to stand for the whole concert and block my entire view. I understood their excitement at getting to see the group live, and there are some songs where you're supposed to stand up, like Follow Me and Jump, but what bothered me was the fact that they didn't just jump for the hype songs or for choruses, they were standing for about 95% of the total runtime of the concert, including during VCRs and ballads. On one hand, I want people to be able to enjoy a concert however they want. On the other hand, they chose the completely incorrect seats for this. I asked them to sit down at one point because they were blocking the view of the tiny kids behind me, but they stood right up again at the next song and then started making snide comments about me to each other, which wasn't super fun. And sure, could I have stood up too? Yeah, but not only would my view have still been blocked because I'm so short, but I would also have blocked the view of the kid behind me, who was so short that when she was standing, her hand brushed the top of my head, even though we were on tiered seating. There was no way I was going to relegate the kid to seeing just my back for the whole concert, certainly not when she was having so much fun. So I sat the whole time and was only able to see the tiniest sliver of the stage most of the time. This meant that I missed out on a good chunk of my favourite moments, including Jiyoung's parts in Follow Me and Last Call, which I was really looking forward to seeing live. I couldn't even see the large screens at the front of the hall. That's how bad my view ended up being. This resulted in me honestly becoming pretty bitter, considering I'd gone to so much effort to get a good seat, and considering it was so expensive. But hilariously enough, and very predictably, my bitterness would always go away whenever Jiyoung was in my field of view. So basically I had a fun concert whenever I could see Jiyoung, and whenever I couldn't see him, I was sad. Also, the reason I go to a concert is to see the choreography live. This seems to be an uncommon reason, but it's my reason. So to have so much of their cool choreography, especially for songs they don't perform on music shows, blocked, when it was literally one of the only reasons I went to the concert, was deeply annoying. Also, the girls in front of me started taking pictures of me over their shoulders to show each other, which felt icky. So overall, a very good concert that was only marred by some poor fan behaviour. I'll give it a 9 out of 10 and will give the fans a 2 out of 10. Joke's on them, as much as it sucked, I forgot about my experience of annoyance far more rapidly than I forgot about my experience of enjoying the concert. Also, my friend really enjoyed it, and now I have a set of 2 Jiyoung photo cards, one for 2024 and one for 2025, which is fun. I guess the question now is whether I liked Even more or P1 Harmony, and honestly that's a hard question. I like P1 Harmony slightly more as a group, but the actual concert experience was worse for them. I also got the bonus of a send-off and soundcheck with EVNNE, and of course it would be borderline impossible for P1 Harmony to live up to the epic experience that was their 2024 concert. So I guess I'll put P1 Harmony below EVNNE, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say, but the gap is minuscule. P1 Harmony just have more annoying fans and are too good for their own good. Although I barely knew a thing about TWICE going into this concert, I did decide I wanted to go and see them, considering how iconic and influential they are. Also, I thought the 360-degree stage would be interesting. When I say I barely knew a thing about them, I really mean it. I know a bunch of their songs, since, you know, they're popular, things like One Spark and Alcohol Free. And I know some more of their songs from survival shows, like Ooh Ah, Yes or Yes, and Feel Special, to name a few. But the only members I knew and could recognise were Jonghyun, Jihyo, and Nayeon, and although I know many of the other members' names, you could not trust me to even know if I saw them that they were from TWICE, let alone who they actually are. Usually I make a rule of knowing every member's name and face before I go to a concert, but in the weeks leading up to this concert I was so swamped with uni work that I didn't even have time to think about it, so I went into it pretty blind. Oh, fun fact, I haven't seen the entirety of Qudos since I was vaccinated for COVID there in 2021, when I was more focused on how much of like a vaccination factory it was as opposed to like actually looking at the arena. The members have been basically rotating in and out the entire tour. It seems like almost every concert has one of them missing because of illness in one form or another, so I was expecting someone to drop out last minute. I just didn't know who. In the end, it was Chaeyoung. I took my Zero Base 1 light stick since I thought it would suit the vibe of the concert. I learned from the StayC debacle and took 2 sets of batteries, which both ran out. I don't know if I'm cursed, my light stick is broken, or what, but it was sad. I decided it would be a good time to test out my suit I bought in preparation for AT's next year, so I wore a white suit, which I think is decently on brand for Twice, with pink and purple crystals and ribbons. I was sadly disappointed by the lack of demon hunters in the crowd. I don't remember exactly which reserve I ended up with or how much it cost, since my friend bought the tickets and I just paid her back, but we ended up right at the back and I believe paid around $200 AUD. Yeah, it was an expensive concert, but on the bright side, we had a really good view. We were on the side of the arena and up high, so we had a good top-down view of all 3 stages and could easily see the screens that made up the floor of the main stage. The only issue with our view was that there was a light right in front of the top screen. You know, the one that shows their faces and the VCR and so on. We could see most of it, but it would have been nice to have been able to have a full view, especially since the camera work for this concert was hands down the best camera work I've ever seen at a K-pop concert. Usually concerts just have 1 camera per member, and maybe if they're lucky, 1 camera on each side for side shots and/or 1 camera at the back for wides. The nature of Twice's 360-degree stage meant that there wasn't 1 single camera desk at the back which shot everyone. Instead, there were 3 to 4 cameras on each of the 4 sides of the arena, and they seemingly followed the action with some doing wides and some doing close-ups. And honestly, this camera setup combined with the unique staging of the show was like 100 out of 10. This is by far the most creatively staged and shot show I've ever been to, and I can't see any K-pop group in the near future doing better than them, unless ATs do something Kingdom level. The 3 360-degree stages meant that Twice not only had to make sure all 4 sides of the arena had equal access to the group, but also that each of the 3 stages did, and that each of the 3 stages and 4 sides had equal access to each member, because you know that if someone who was Nyeon biased was at one side and she was always on the opposite side, there would be riots. Not just Nyeon biased people, she's just a hypothetical example. So not only was the choreography and staging with lifts and things very creatively designed to move the members and group around evenly, but the cameras did the same. This was the best quality camera work ever. I felt like it had actually been directed and staged intentionally as opposed to just random shots, like with every other concert. This actually felt like a movie, and as someone who is very interested in how the camera systems of these concerts work, I was practically frothing at the mouth watching some of these shots. Some of the reveals for the solo stages and transitions between them were especially good. I also liked how sometimes the group would be shot from across the arena, instead of by the cameras closest to them, which had a very artistic vibe. And when they were on the runways that connected the stages, the cameras had to shoot them at an angle, not straight on, which made the camera work even more unique and engaging. It was also clearly staged and timed to highlight specific moves from specific angles, as opposed to every other concert where I suspect there's just a dude looking at all the cameras who picks one at semi-random to show. I don't know if these cameras had specific lenses, were more high quality in general, the screens had been upgraded or what, but the actual camera quality seemed really high too, like Ultra HD footage instead of whatever random phone image seems to happen at most concerts. The creative staging also meant there were tons of interesting details. One I found particularly interesting was that the edges of the stage glowed whenever the members were on that specific stage, and when some members or a group moved from one stage to another, the light would follow them, like they were activating the stage or something like that. This is completely meaningless, but it was a nice detail, and it felt like magical girly. They also had a live band, which unfortunately wasn't very noticeable, especially with the 360-degree stage covering them up, but they did get a nice solo moment, and I appreciate their effort. One thing I thought was kind of funny and kind of sad was that both the band and the backup dancers tried to hype up the crowd several times, but like only one person in the pit was paying attention to them, and everyone else was just looking at the members, which was a shame for them. But you know by now that I really appreciate the backup dancers and behind the scenes staff, sometimes even more than the actual group. Oh, also, someone got kicked out of the concert behind us. I'm not entirely sure what happened, but I feel like he was in someone else's seat. As far as the group themselves, Sana apparently tweaked something in soundcheck, so was seated for the first half of the concert. Regardless, I really admire the tenacity and effort of the members during the concert. The 3 stages and needing to cater to all 4 sides of the venue would have taken tons of practice and effort, but they still kept the energy high. The vast majority of the songs on the setlist also had choreographies, which is crazy effort from them. The only downside was that they barely talked to the crowd. I think there were 2 tiny talking segments where they basically introduced themselves and said goodbye, and that was it. There also seemed to be a low amount of fan service, which could have been disappointing to people in the pit, but maybe I just missed it because my attention was so divided. I had an interesting experience on the way home. When I got to Strathfield, the train indicator showed that the front of the train was quite empty and the back was quite full. This was weird in and of itself, but obviously I wanted to be at the front, so I checked my maps so I knew which way the front would go and went that way. I ran into a couple from the concert who were wondering which way the front was as I went, and I told them, and they were impressed with my knowledge for some reason. And when the train arrived, I literally don't know. I randomly walked to a certain part of the platform. I genuinely could not tell you why I walked that way. I think I must have been possessed or something. But the couple and a few other people looked at me weirdly because I think I looked very deliberate. But hilariously enough, and by complete coincidence, the train doors stopped right in front of me. I accidentally perfectly guessed it. So now there's a random couple of onces and some random Sydney-sider man who think I'm a train genius, which is funny to me. Also, a kid named Kevin went missing on the train and hadn't been found by the time I got off. So hopefully Kevin found his mum. Anyway, despite not knowing any of the members, I had tons of fun. It was also Jonghyun's birthday, which was nice, and she reminded me how much I love country K-pop. Yes, I will probably make a country K-pop video at some point because not only is country K-pop music epic and fun, but it's also very fitting for the industry. Cue evil K-pop laughter. Overall, I think I'll give the concert a 7 out of 10. Now, the question is, did I enjoy Twice more or StayC more? Honestly, I'd say I enjoyed them pretty equally, but I think the staging and quality was just so much higher for Twice, so I'll bump them up over StayC. I can't justify giving StayC a 6 out of 10, so they'll just have to be below Twice, I guess. I also liked Billlie more than Twice, so they can stay on 8 out of 10. This was a weird one. Seriously, this is the weirdest K-pop event I've been to. Mind you, I suppose being Australian, I haven't been to many K-pop events anyway. Anyway, this event, the K-Content Planet, was announced on the 18th of October, so only about 3 weeks before the event actually happened. The event was promoted by KOCA, which according to their Instagram stands for Korean Creative Content Agency. Okay, so first red flag, 3 weeks out the event is announced, and it used very vague language. There will be a live performance by NMIXX and On and Off? Why not just say concert? Why provide literally no details? It slowly came out that the event would run for 6 days, and on the 6th evening there would be, supposedly, a performance by NMIXX and On and Off. Okay. And then, all of a sudden, they announced the way to get tickets for the concert. Mentally prepare yourselves. There were 3 ways to get tickets. The first way was the obvious one, to get online tickets. There were, as far as I'm aware, 2 releases of online tickets. One as soon as this was announced, and a second one on the morning of the concert. Yeah, screw anyone who needs to catch a flight, I guess. And each sale batch had 30 free tickets. And that was it. The second method to get tickets was to be in the first 100, or 150 depending on the post, people in line on the night of the event at 4 PM. Okay. The final way to get tickets was to spin a wheel at the actual K content event, which involved completing all of the missions at the event and spinning the wheel for a chance to win one of 150 concert tickets each day. Obviously, fans were incredibly unimpressed. Not only was there no consideration for international fans or fans outside of Metro Sydney, but there was no consideration for safety. Who was going to stop a stampede at 4 p.m. when the line started? Cocker certainly didn't specify. All tickets were free, to be fair, but this isn't how you run a K-pop event, especially in Australia, which gets few enough events that fans are constantly desperate. This was On and Off's first time in Australia, and NMIXX have a pretty chunky fan base here, considering, Lily. Fans were so disappointed with this management that they were literally begging Cocker to take their money for tickets, which was fair. Now, what about me, myself, and I? Well, I've seen NMIXX before. I saw them at the similarly ill-fated Wild K-pop Fest in 2023, and since then they've released almost no music I like, so I didn't go to their concert earlier this year. I would have been fine not seeing them again. It was On and Off that I really wanted to see. In my opinion, On and Off are one of the bucket list K-pop groups that someone needs to see. I wouldn't say they've ever had a massive impact on the industry, but I think their songs are definitely popular enough, and they've definitely had a small impact. Not to mention the general interest that I have in them, considering their unique concept, them being on the original season of Kingdom, and them being a 3rd to 4th gen cusp group. I suppose, to me, they're emblematic of 3rd gen boy group K-pop in the same way Pentagon is. Neither group is super popular, but both are K-pop of their era distilled in a bottle. So yeah, although I'm not an On and Off fan, I definitely wanted to see them if I could. As you might expect, it being November, I was busy working and writing essays in the week of the actual event, so I didn't get a chance to spin the wheel, and on the morning of the 8th, I set my alarm for 9 a.m. and didn't get a ticket. Yeah, as you'd expect, those 30 tickets sold out in literally less than a second. By the time my browser even realised that ticket sales were working, they were already over. I had previously accepted my fate that I wasn't going to this event, but I had still written a bit about it in this script because I felt like it was too weird for me to not mention. But I was still interested in seeing what this event was, and since my Saturday happened to be empty, I took the train down to Redfern to check it out. Speaking of, never have I ever seen a K-pop concert be held in Carriageworks before. And what did the epic K-content event and challenge turn out to be? A room with a bunch of promos of Korean brands. I also thought it would be super full with people trying their luck spinning the wheel, but there were 2 people in there with me, and I didn't even get there that early. It was 10:30. The only explanation I can think of is that all the diehard fans came in previous days or were outside of Sydney and couldn't get there in person. But I was surprised because I thought that people would have been there at opening trying to snag one of the limited tickets for the day. I had psyched myself up for some epic challenge where I'd have to do some dance challenge, eat some weird food, or do some other variety show missions, but the actual mission was in 5 parts that were, I kid you not. Part 1. Choose a character. That was it, you got a stamp for that. Part 2. Watch a video of a webtoon and guess the title from 3 options. This was by far the hardest mission, but considering my anime knowledge and the weird titles of webtoons, I was able to figure it out pretty easily. Only one of them was a webtoon title kind of option. Part 3. Literally, I am 1000% dead serious. The 3rd challenge was just to look at some Korean designer clothes which were for sale. The man running the stall didn't even ask me which brand was my favourite before he stamped my book, like he did with the girls before me. I was so baffled with this mission that I actually asked the guy if that was it, and he said yeah, looking embarrassed. I remember this, he was so yeah, I wish I could give you something else to do, but that's literally it. Part 4 was play a random iPad game and get a score of over 80 million. Considering the game was very confusing and I'd never played it before, but still got close to 300 million, I think you can tell how easy that mission was. And part 5 was watch a 10-second video which gives you 2 fun facts. First, Koreans eat 6 million bowls of jjajangmyeon per day. And second, those noodles put end to end would loop around the globe 1.5 times. Alright squad, quiz time. How many bowls of jjajangmyeon do Koreans eat per day? If you got it wrong, well, let's just say you're not going to the On and Off concert. Yeah, it was literally that easy. So, feeling incredibly stupid and baffled, I wandered over to the wheel, got myself ticked off, gave it the most half-hearted spin ever, and got a concert ticket just like that. I was so incredibly shocked at how easy the whole process was that I just stood there, and the lady running it got worried that I was upset with getting a ticket somehow. In fact, I was so shocked that once I was given my ticket, I just skedaddled. I didn't even take the time to look at the other, albeit few and small, exhibits in the hall. And keep in mind that had I somehow failed to spin a ticket on the spinner which was 1/3 ticket options, I could have posted about the event on SNS to win a second spin. It was seriously the most bizarre ticketing experience I've ever been through, and although I'm grateful that I got a ticket, I'm just baffled about what the point was. I can only imagine the hope was that by having a concert, fans would be drawn to the event and would buy lots of products. All of the clothes, which included clothes apparently worn by NMIXX, were on sale. But, the actual challenges weren't good at encouraging people to engage with the content and buy products. I wasn't even allowed to buy any ramyeon from the ramyeon stand. I had to spin the wheel to win it. And who in their right minds would want ramyeon you can get for cheap in any Woolies over an NMIXX and On and Off ticket? Anyway, so since I'd gone so early, I definitely wasn't going to be hanging around in the city for 7 hours. So I went home, got changed into a blue-themed outfit, put my last blue ribbons on my headphones and some blue crystals on my face, grabbed my blue Zero Base 1 light stick, and headed back to the concert. In the end, the price of this concert was, well, free, but I suppose it did cost me the train fare from Redfern and back in the morning, which was about $5 total, and the bubble tea, frozen yogurt, and sushi I bought, which probably totaled $30. Wow, unsustainable concert prices. Since I've seen them previously and learned their names and faces, I do know all of the members of NMIXX, but I don't know all of the members of On and Off, and honestly didn't have enough faith I'd be going to this event to learn. But I did really want to hear Beautiful Beautiful live, which had been promised. The actual event was interesting. I mean, I was so skeptical about the wording and management of the event that I wouldn't have been surprised if the two groups weren't actually performing there, let's just say that. First, I found that tickets had been randomly split into A, B, and C categories. I thought it would be a setup where the stage was at the front and each of the 3 sections took up a strip running from the back to the front of the hall, but they were actually running from front to back horizontally. I'll put a graphic on screen if anyone is confused. This means that any of those suckers who got a C ticket randomly were all the way at the back, no matter how early they showed up. Lucky me got a B ticket, but of course I was jealous of the A people. I had a decent view during the On and Off section, although I did feel sorry for them because the crowd was dead and clearly only there for NMIXX. Speaking of, so many people took out their phones to film NMIXX that I couldn't even see the group, and the large screens almost never showed the actual members, usually just showing AI graphics. So let's just say I didn't have a good view of NMIXX, but at least I've seen them before. Interestingly, a good chunk of the crowd were first-time NMIXX attendees. My next gripe with the concert comes with the audio team. Both groups sang 2 songs live? Apparently they were trying to sing live because Lily asked the soundies multiple times to turn up their vocals, but it never actually happened and she had to scream into her mic. Regardless, it didn't sound live to the audience, which reduced my enjoyment of it. Also, the translator went missing multiple times, forcing Lily and Wyatt to translate for their members a lot, something neither of them looked super keen to have to do. Now, the concert was supposed to run for 2 hours, but only ended up going for 1.5 hours. I wasn't super upset with this, I guess. Both groups looked well and truly dead, and NMIXX especially seemed half-hearted about being there. But it was more false advertising from an already poorly managed event. And then my single biggest issue, On and Off only got to perform 6 songs while NMIXX got to do 8. And no, NMIXX were not the headliners as such. I know NMIXX were more popular in the audience and are more popular in Australia, but considering their past and their reception at this event, On and Off are probably never coming back to Australia, and NMIXX are quite likely to come back. So, Can't we just be nice to On and Off while they're here? That said, this was partially a matter of personal preference. Like I've said, I have seen NMIXX before, and they haven't released music I've been super into since. But I like the vast majority of On and Off songs, so I really wanted to hear more from them, and it felt like they were snubbed. In the end, though, I guess I had a pretty positive experience with this concert, and I was grateful for the opportunity to see On and Off, who I'll definitely be checking out more in the future. I do want to say, though, that the only reason I had a positive experience with this event was because I just happen to live relatively close to Redfern and happened to have a free day where I could go in, get lucky with the wheel, and get a ticket. The vast majority of fans would have had a very negative experience with this concert, whether that be because they were unable to go in person and thus very unlikely to get an online ticket, because they live outside of Sydney and couldn't plan for a concert that happened on the same day as ticket sales, or something else. This was a terribly run event and didn't even make me more likely to buy the Korean products on display. I do think I need to take the management of the event into consideration in my ratings, considering I did so for P1 Harmony, Dreamcatcher, and Twice. So I'll rate this event a 5 out of 10. It was a short and sweet concert, and I enjoyed seeing On and Off. NMIXX were, as usual, good dancers, but they've, whether on purpose or not, lip-synced both times I've seen them, which is sad. And the event was terribly run, so I can't justify putting it higher. The only reason I'd put it above Dreamcatcher is because of my own subjective experience with the ticketing process. If I'd missed out on a ticket or struggled more, I would be putting it far lower. I don't know, maybe you Americans and Europeans and Koreans are just used to weird and sudden K-pop events, but even then you get so many of them that it probably isn't bad. Anyone living in a major American city has no need to worry about their favourite group coming or not, but in Australia we get so few K-pop events that each event is notable no matter how small, and the fans are desperate. So this was in poor taste for the community here. It was also my last concert of the year, which is a bit of a downer compared to Twice. Ah well. So now that I've gone through all of the concerts, let's take a look at some good old stats and my final ranking. I went to 7 concerts this year, bringing my total up to 16. I've never been to a non-K-pop concert, and I don't think that's changing unless Baby Metal have like mega cheap tickets. So my final ranking of the concerts I went to this year was: first, EVNNE at 9 out of 10. I put it above P1 Harmony as I had a better concert experience. 2, P1 Harmony, 9 out of 10. 3, Billlie, 8 out of 10, bumped up from a 7 out of 10 over Twice and StayC. 4, Twice, 7 out of 10. 5, StayC, 7 out of 10, below Twice because of Twice's insane creativity. 6, The K-Content Planet, NMIXX, and On and Off, 5 out of 10. And 7, Dreamcatcher, 4 out of 10, bumped down significantly because of poor management and concert experiences. Congrats to EVNNE, who not only got maximum ticket money out of me, but also have been announced to be renewing, at least in part. I just hope that EVNNE add Gunnick to the lineup and come back to Australia. That would be an absolute slay. And a sad consolation prize to Dreamcatcher, who were basically the opposite of EVNNE. Not only was their concert my lowest rated, but they lost members to the void of no company right before the concert, and may well disband at this point. Unfortunate, but they had a good run. Okay, so my average concert rating was 7, a very unsurprising rating, which for me reflects the fact that most of the concerts I went to this year were overall good and enjoyable, but not mind-blowing. I have high hopes for ATEEZ next year. Can they give me the life-changing experience that would warrant a 10 out of 10 rating? Well, they have a lot to answer for, considering most of the money I've spent on K-pop has been related to them. I'm watching you, ATEEZ. Alright, now for the final statistic I want to discuss. How much money did yours truly spend in their sometimes ill-advised concert ventures? Well, I spent a total of $1,075 AUD on tickets overall, which was an average of $153.57 per concert. A reasonable price for a K-pop concert, a crazy price for anything else. If we include other concert expenses like ribbons, train fares, food, and so on, I probably spent another $210, so $1,285 total, or $183.57 per concert. I'm overall satisfied with this. It wasn't as high as I thought it would be, and I feel like I got enough enjoyment out of it to make it worth it. I figure if I have the money to spend on concerts, I should do it now while I'm young and free, before I maybe end up with a house debt or something. And before you worry, don't. I'm still saving up a lot, guys. Casper's not an idiot with money, unless you're a hater of one of these groups, in which case you'd consider me an idiot. The most common location for events this year was Moore Park. I went to 3 events there. I went to 2 events in the town hall area, one in Redfern and one in Olympic Park, i.e. Qudos. I actually didn't go to any in Darling Harbour this year, but there were also an unusually small number of K-pop events held there this year. I didn't necessarily have a quietest month, as there were multiple months, January, April, June, September, October, and December, in which I didn't have concerts. My busiest month was technically November, since I went to 2 events. But do we really count the K-Content Planet? So I saw groups for half of the year, basically. As usual, this was backloaded, as 4 of the 7 concerts were in the second half of the year. Groups just don't seem to like touring Australia earlier in the year. How does the 7 concerts this year stack up to my previous years? Well, in 2023 I went to 4 concerts, and in 2024 I went to 5, so let's just say it's increasing every year, partially because I have more money and partially because COVID is less of an issue. This year brought the number of groups I've seen multiple times up to 3. I saw Stray Kids in 2023 and 2024, NMIXX in 2023 and 2025, and P1 Harmony in 2024 and 2025, and I saw 6 new groups. So with that short and sweet overview, let's wrap up my concert review. I don't have much to say here. I went to a bunch of concerts this year, adding to my list. I had fun. I collected a lot of confetti, so much so that I think I start metaphorically drooling as soon as I see confetti at concerts now. If I had to recommend you go to just one of these concerts, well, most of these tours are over now, but I think the group I would recommend the most is EVNNE. Not just because they were on top of my list, but because I think they had great fan service and audience interaction, showed great performances, and they're a small group you can have a more intimate experience with. I think they're my top underrated concert of this year. After them, I'd probably recommend you see Twice's 360-degree stage if you can. It's just a great technical experience, and of course, Twice are a massively influential group. Next year, I only have 1 concert lined up so far, ATEEZ, but I'm sure there will be several more, and I'm sure ATEEZ will be a bloodbath. I'm recording this on a Tuesday, and the pre-sale is on Friday. I'm anxious, let's just say that. Unfortunately, I don't get any ticket priority for being a 7-year Treasure era fan. I'll make another video like this next year. I thought it was fun to look back at all of the concerts I'd been to and chit-chat about Australian transport. So with that, we reach the end of this video. Thanks for watching, I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next one.